Natalie and Stephanie, welcome to the Scholarship GPS podcast. So happy to have you both here with us today. Have tons of questions for you, but before we jump in, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Yes, thanks. And happy to be here. Thanks for having us. I'm Natalie Schoonover. I co-founded LaunchPoint Talent with my partner Stephanie Turner here. We each spent more than 20 years on the employer side of hiring, sitting on the other side of the table than we do today. We worked at EY each for 20 years, hiring students right out of college. So we've got experience. I think we've estimated over tens of thousands of students that we've hired into internships and full-time roles. And now have flipped the script and are helping those students land roles at their preferred employers. So we're excited to be here and answer all those burning questions.
Hi, happy to be here. Stephanie Turner. My path looks a lot like Natalie's, so we usually do the combined introduction, but we're really happy to be with you today.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. So obviously you come at things from the angle of getting students employed, and as much as I think that education has its own intrinsic value, that is really why 99.999% of students are going to be going to college, is they want to get a job. That's the trajectory we're going to take, but we might start at a kind of surprising place, and that is back in high school. Do you have any thoughts or advice or tips for what high school students might be able to do to set them on a path to set themselves up for getting that first job out of college or a good career path?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things we would say that high schoolers should probably start thinking about, and maybe even some skills to start sort of folding in to their schedules. The first thing that I think about is the idea of reflecting on their experiences. So many students that we talk to, they're moving through part-time jobs, clubs, sports, right? The leadership roles, and it all moves really quickly. I would say the same even about my own life. My kids, their last day of school is today, and it feels like it wasn't necessarily 9 months ago that we started the school year. So we're all just moving through life so quickly. But the students who recruit well later are the ones who can look back on the experiences that they've had and can identify what they learned from that experience. They can articulate the skills that they built. And so I would say that's a habit that we could all benefit from, but one that I would encourage sort of like flexing that muscle a little bit now in high school. The second thing that I would layer in there is just curiosity. It is an underrated skill across the board, but if we can start again building that muscle earlier, it will lead to continued curiosity later about careers, right? So we're not saying no today necessarily that you want to go in a very specific career post-graduation, but it's an opportunity to start getting early exposure, talk
Mhm.
to people who do work that you find interesting, right? Ask genuine questions, sort of train yourself to be curious about the experiences that other people are having. And that low stakes exploration, it just builds a foundation that students can sort of lean on a bit later. I'm wondering, Dave, if kind of that college process rewards some of the same things, right? Some self-awareness, even the scholarship
Yeah,
process.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that was what I was going to say before you jumped into your second point, which I'm glad that you did. I didn't want to interrupt you, but that reflecting on experiences and identifying the things that you learned through those experiences, that translates incredibly well to the scholarship process. That talking about that, telling those stories in a way that relates to what the student hopes to achieve next, really makes typically a great scholarship application and essay. So I love how all these things fold together. Like when I'm talking to college admissions people, the things to set yourself up to get into your dream college are also the same things to set yourself up to earn scholarships, which sounds like it's also the same things to set yourself up to get your job out of college.
There is absolutely a correlation there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of college, we're still going to stick with high school, but we're going to get a little closer to the college piece. And as students and families are thinking about college from the perspective of recruiting and getting that career start right out of college, does the name of the school have any bearing on that?
We get this question a lot, especially since our previous seats in creating recruitment strategies for employers. What I would say is that the name of the school is their brand, and sometimes yes, a brand can open a door,
Hmm.
but it also it doesn't ride. Not everything rides on the name of the school, and therefore then getting a job out of college. So here's what we've seen happen is once you get into the interview process, they're going to select the best candidate based on the interview, not based on where you went to school. So that's
Yeah.
when I say it can open up some doors. It can,
Hmm.
like if employers are actively recruiting on those campuses, they're
Sure.
focused there. But online applications have really opened up access for students to apply anywhere. And if they've got a great resume, they can do some online networking. I would say the barriers are very low on, which college you choose, and does that tee you up for success in finding a great, post collegiate job or career. So it can matter in some stakes, but I wouldn't say it's everything. I certainly wouldn't base your decision on the name alone.
Hmm. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were saying that is that sometimes there can be a benefit to being the big fish in the small pond, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if
Exactly.
you go to a university like University of Central Florida, literally the biggest college in the country is just an hour away from me. It's probably pretty hard to stand out with 100,000 other students. But if you're going to a small liberal arts college with, maybe 5,000 students, it's going to be maybe easier is not necessarily the right word because maybe their curriculum might be more difficult. That's a different question, but you can certainly just by numbers have a better opportunity to stand out in a smaller crowd. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So one other question as we're kind of getting into the college piece, as students and parents are doing college tours, do you have some tips on things that they could be asking on those tours as they're thinking about preparing for after graduation, post graduation career?
I actually love having this conversation with families when I ask them about what they learned on their college tours. So many of them tell me, like, we saw the dorms and we heard all about the living situation and the dining options, and the food is award winning. They'll also usually drop like acceptance rate stats at
Mm,
me because those are the things that the schools are showcasing, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
they're marketing to what they know is important. Those things are exciting for prospective students. I do think when I debrief with families, they can't necessarily tell me as much, with as much color, as much detail, what happens between enrollment and employment. And so I think
Mhm,
that's where we would, of course, suggest that families spend some time, that they ask questions like, when do students here typically secure their first internship, or what percentage complete at least one internship before graduation? What is the ratio of career center professionals to students in this particular program or in this school? Which employers actually come to campus physically, right? Invest their time, their effort, their energy, their dollars into recruiting from this school. There's one other question that we like to ask, like we like to tell families to ask. It's pretty niche and specific, but the question essentially is, what does a proactive student do from freshman year to graduation? What would a proactive student do that makes them most competitive? if they can answer that with some level of specificity, I think that's a really strong signal. If the answer is really vague, to me, it signals that they haven't thought about, right? Not every student, but we're talking about a proactive student. If a student
Mhm.
is thinking about this, what is it that they do on this campus to set themselves up for success? Like there should be some meat that someone can put around that bone to be able to answer the question. So, um, yeah, those are the things that I think when you're in person, you want to ask. The brochure or the website, they may not be able to bring it to life, but when you're there and you're in person and you're interacting, I think that's the real opportunity to see what's behind the doors.
That actually leads into the next question I wanted to ask, and that is, okay, so we've chosen our school, we're starting school. What are some things that a first year student can do to help them on that path to their career?
I'll take this one. I would say this answer might surprise you, but we would tell any family or any freshman that your first semester, we don't really want you focusing much on your career. We
Okay.
actually want you focusing on figuring out your new community, how you're going to get involved there, what that's going to look like, getting comfortable, because that's all part of this whole, transitioning to college is figuring out this new world that you're going to navigate. Now, if you were to say, I got that figured out, right? I'm going to figure out what clubs I'm going to join. I'm going to figure out how I get to class every single day. Then we would say, just see what maybe the career fair looks like that second semester, right? Just plant your feet on the ground there and see how chaotic it is so that the first time you're either going to career services or going to a career fair, you don't have anything riding on it. You've already seen it because walking into those places as a freshman, there isn't typically many employment opportunities for you. They're few and far
Yeah.
between.
Yep.
Um, but just walking in those doors, seeing it for yourself when there isn't a ton writing on it is the best thing we can do. We would say focus more on your involvement in your campus community, what student orgs you want to get involved with, what relationships you're going to build with your professors, get settled, and then get focused on the career activity.
I like that. I especially like that low stakes approach to the first time through the job fair or through the career center. I think that's good advice for lots of things from what organizations you're going to join to even applying for scholarships. One reason to apply for scholarships at an earlier age is it's not that the stakes are lower because the prize amounts are the same for that same scholarship, but there's less pressure to earn money when you're a high school freshman than there is the week before the college bill is due. So, yeah, yeah.
And same
Um,
is to be said for walking into that career fair as a senior, and you've only got a few weeks to figure out what
yeah,
you're going to do after graduation, and
absolutely.
that lead-in time. Yep, so
Yeah,
many similarities.
yeah. I think probably anything in life, the longer the runway, the better the better chances of success at liftoff,
More
right?
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so you mentioned that first semester, kind of getting your feet wet, getting involved in things. And this question, I guess, could apply for high school students as well, but I thought of it more for college students. What are the types of things that they might be doing outside the classroom that will be helpful for landing their dream job?
Mhm. I think there is overlap here in this question, both college and high school students. We talk to so many students who their instinct is like, I'm going to go wide, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
get involved in as many things as I can because I want to take up lots of room on my resume with all of
Mhm.
my extracurricular activities. Um, I would say that, again, like our guidance might surprise some of the folks in your audience, when we would review resumes and see this long list of extracurricular activities, but not necessarily depth in any of them, it was almost a red flag. It almost came across as like resume padding rather than evidence of commitment to an organization or growth or impact, right? And we would rather see that. So what we coach our clients on is one or two organizations that you start as a member, but you grow into, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to become the president, right? You don't have to go to the highest level or the most extreme, but where you can put that you maybe you led a fundraising event, or maybe you took on leadership of just a component, a project. You managed the budget, right? Like there's smaller ways to break this up. That's a far more compelling story than just sort of listing organizations, but when asked about it, only be able to say, like, I went to the meetings. That's
Mhm.
not impactful. That
Yeah.
doesn't demonstrate sort of the depth. We've seen this also come up with athletics, and I would
Mhm.
imagine that you're going to have listeners here, their students are involved in sports. We had a Division 1 athlete who we worked with, and on her resume that she shared with us, she had all of these athletic accomplishments, like all of the awards that she had won. She was a soccer player, all of the goals that she had scored, all of this was like front and center on her resume, but only through conversation did we learn that she was the team captain.
Mhm.
I mean,
Okay.
like mind blown. We were like,
Yeah.
this is the thing that everyone's going to care about. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
employers are going to care about the fact that your team selected you to lead them, right? And all of the skills and the attributes, the behaviors that you now exhibit because of this experience. Um, it's not usually like what I would say in summary is like experience or a lack of experience isn't usually the problem. It's lost in the translation of
Mhm.
what do employers value? And maybe in your world, what do scholarship committees or what do
Yeah.
colleges value? It's not necessarily like the thing that most people are focused on. It's not the long list.
Mhm.
It's that you can demonstrate impact. You can tie and connect the dot back to how you're going to bring value in this new capacity.
Yeah, that definitely ties into my world. And I'm in some really large parent Facebook groups, and every spring I see tons of people posting disappointment that their kid didn't get into their dream college, and they'll post all their stats, and they have great GPA, great test scores, and they're in a million clubs. And it's like, yeah, that's a lot of stuff. You know how many other students have a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
It's the depth and the impact. That's really what colleges are looking for. It's what scholarships are looking for. And the story of the student athlete, yeah, like no, I mean, I shouldn't say no job. I don't even know what the sport was, but let's say it was basketball. Unless she's trying to be a professional basketball player, they don't care how many points she scored. But
Yep.
every job is going to be interested in her being the team captain and those leadership skills.
Yep.
So, yeah,
And even like not necessarily having that team captain role, right? Because if
sure.
she
Yeah.
played soccer, let's say there were 25 girls on her soccer team, not everyone's going to have that opportunity to take on
Sure.
the role of
Yeah.
team captain. But being able to go back to that like reflective exercise, being able to
Hmm.
think back on your career as a soccer player, right? That's got to be lengthy if you're now playing D1,
Yeah. Yeah.
even as a teammate. What did you learn? Like being able to articulate your resilience, your
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
management skills, right? You're
Hmm.
on the road, you're traveling, you're having to manage your academics from afar, you're competing, you're a teammate, right? There's so much that we could tease out from student. I mean, we love working with student athletes. There's so much to draw from those experiences. Like, regardless of team captain or not, please don't rely on how many goals you've scored because there's so much more depth to that experience.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things that probably most students who are serious about trying to get that job right out of college are looking for are internships. And I'm not in that world, but I hear that they are getting fewer and farther between. Is that the case? And then, assuming that it is, what should students be doing to you know maybe set themselves up to be the one selected to get a more formal internship?
Yeah, this is one of the most important conversations we're having right now because it's the summer season
Hmm.
and you have students who have landed the prestigious internship, and it's even become harder to to transition from the internship into a full-time offer, a full-time role. And you also have students who didn't land the prestigious internship and are working what we might call a common summer job. But we would sit from a place of you both experiences can give you skills
Mhm.
that an employer will see as valuable. And it's really going to be about demonstrating and articulating the impact that you had, whether you're, scooping ice cream and dealing with challenging customers for 8 hours a day during your summer gig, or whether you're working a finance internship. We've done a ton in this space for this summer because we keep hearing from parents, my kid didn't land the internship. They're behind now. And I would argue that they are just as much in this game as the student who did land the prestigious internship. Stephanie and I love to play the game of tell us your summer job and we will rattle off the skills that you're building because it is
Mhm.
that transferable skills piece that can be experienced and valued and gained in any part-time job that a student has. And that's exactly the work that we do, help them translate it into the employer, speak the skills that an employer is looking for to be able to showcase what you've learned and what you took from that experience. So the internships are getting harder to land. It's also harder to convert that internship into a full-time role. Employers are just because you got an internship these days does not mean you'll get a full-time offer out of it. But the buck doesn't stop there. I think there's a lot of different ways to build skills and then showcase them to employers to be a great candidate.
It sounds like there's just this common theme of reflection throughout the whole piece.
Yeah,
The student who's scooping ice cream only needs to reflect on those skills, right? They don't need to wallow in the fact that they didn't get the finance internship because they're still learning something. They can still have impact, and there's still value to that. So, yeah.
absolutely.
All right, so we've worked our way through, and now we're at the point of somebody who is just about to graduate or has graduated, and they're out in the job market, and they're not getting any traction. And they've done everything right. They maybe even had the internship. They kept their grades up. They had meaningful activities. Um, is there a common theme of maybe what went wrong? And what would be your advice to somebody like that?
There is definitely a theme, and I would say the thing that we see most often, most commonly, is that these students are in fact strong and they are not specific, meaning the instinct, kind of like the instinct with extracurriculars,
Hmm.
the instinct with applying to jobs is to apply really broadly, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to cast this really wide net. And in theory, like I get that. I get that instinct. I get why it sounds kind of smart. In practice, we find that it's one of the ways that very capable students sort of stall out. When a hiring manager is looking at a resume or they're sitting across from a candidate in person, virtual, they're asking a lot of interview questions, but they're asking themselves really one question, and that is this person ready to do the job that I am specifically hiring for? Not
Hmm.
any job, but this one. And
Hmm.
if your resume is built to appeal to the masses, appeal to everyone, it's probably not really resonating with anyone, right? So we see students who have genuinely very impressive backgrounds, but they're applying to roles across 4 or 5 different industries or 4 or 5 completely different roles. Every single application is sort of like a little bit relevant, but none of them are aligned. And so
Hmm.
when we onboard new clients, especially recent grads, a lot of the work that we are doing is saying, like, let's narrow in, right? Let's add more focus rather than more volume to this effort. Pick a lane, pick two even, and then align your resume to it. Have one set of application materials for that first target lane,
Hmm.
have another set of application materials for the second, and then your story, like how you are when you're reflecting on all those experiences, how you articulate that to lane number one will be different than the things that you highlight when you're trying to align your story to what employers in lane number two are looking for. So we say that traction, it follows clarity, not
Mhm.
the other way around.
Mhm.
So being strong, a strong student, a strong applicant is not the same as being specific.
It's really amazing how much this aligns with scholarships as well because yes, there are tons of students that have very impressive resumes that are applying for scholarships, and I do suggest casting a wide net, but a targeted wide net. But I what really struck me was what you said of, okay, we need basically this profile for, you said, lane one and a different profile for lane two. It's the
Mhm.
same thing. I mean, you can. Yes, you can reuse a lot of the same materials and essays for various scholarships, but you always need to tailor it. And sometimes you might need two different profiles essentially, depending on the type of scholarship you're applying for. So yeah, yep. And what you said of, they are hiring for a specific job, and so you have to tailor it to that specific job, right? I mean, that's
Absolutely.
yeah,
You'd
yeah.
be surprised how many students we talk to who come to us and say, like, I had my resume looked at by the Career Center, or I used Chat
Mm,
GPT. And what we say is everyone's doing that, right? So, like, what
yeah.
about this resume is yours? When we were on the employer side, we would see 100,000 applicants, actually, let me be clearer. We'd
Hmm.
see 100,000 unique applicants for our roles in any given year, often more.
Hmm.
When you're talking about that kind of applicant volume, you don't want your resume to look like everybody else's,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You want to bring something different to the conversation. You want to bring something different to the resume. The goal isn't to like blend in, the goal is to stand out, right? So
Yep.
how do you do that in a meaningful way?
Yeah. Yep. That's fantastic. Um, all right. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of time here, but because it is mostly parents that listen to my podcast, is there something that you would want parents to understand about what things are like out in the job market, what employers are looking for today? Because, I haven't applied for a job in, I don't even know how long. So when my son was going through this, I really did not even really know what to tell him other than,
Mhm.
look somebody in the eye and shake their hand.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which is, I'm sure, not bad advice, but I think you need a
Nope.
little more than that today, right?
It's great advice. You just got to find that hand, right?
Yeah,
Because it can't reach
right.
to the screen.
Yep. Yeah.
I'll start with the job market. One thing I wish every parent would hear is more does not equal better. So
Mm,
Stephanie mentioned it, but this whole idea of like more applications is a better strategy is, I think, absolutely false. Now, if you were to say more connections is a better
mm,
strategy, then I can get on board with that. We've got to
okay.
get our students out from behind just an application, a submit button, and building some connections, building some relationships with people that can help them through this process. So that would be the first piece of advice I would tell parents. Don't ask like how many jobs did you apply to today, but rather how many people did you try to connect with today, or how many conversations did you have today. And then the other thing I would share on the like, what's the one thing employers are looking for parents to hear. I do think every parent thinks their kids got everything going on, right? They should be
Sure.
the number one candidate.
Yeah.
And they probably do. Like we've said, they have great resumes, great GPAs. They've got the laundry list of things. But if you can talk to your student about how they're coachable, how they're
Mm,
showing up ready to learn, how they're finding some grit in their day to day, just getting through, what's on their to do list, that's what employers are looking for. So they're
mhm,
going to find a ton of students. We just said 100,000 applicants that have a great looking resume. But how do they show up, and how can they talk about how they're eager to be there? They're energized by this work. They show that they're coachable, right? So those are the things that I think parents have to kind of wrap their head around, is both the job market that their students navigating, but also it's different than pulling up the newspaper and just calling somebody, right? They've really got to, those ads do exist, but they exist in the hundreds of thousands these days.
Yeah.
And helping their student navigate that is really a place where they can, I would say, get alongside them versus get
Mhm.
into the process with them.
Mm,
I think that's
mm.
also a challenge we navigate with some of our students and parents is how do you support them through it versus trying to
Yeah.
drive the whole process for them.
I mean, I love that final thought, Natalie. And I think even as parents, like we resonate with that. Like, what is my role as a parent versus as a teacher? Our kids are a little bit younger, but is my role to teach them when they come home from school? Am I teaching them something about their homework? Am I just asking them if they've done their homework? Like, what is my role here? And I would say a lot of parents come to us feeling frustrated with the relationship. And it's often because they've kind of taken off this parental hat and put on the career coach hat. And like I can see why that creates tension in a relationship. And so, from our seat, when we're talking to families, we're like, we've got this part of it. You get to go back to being mom or dad or caregiver. Like, let us take the accountability, let us take the, more of the like career related stuff. Like, you get to go back to being just a parent or a caregiver. Because that is hard to sort of stand in both lanes.
Absolutely. And parents struggle with that with the scholarship process too. They tend to fall on one of two sides, which neither of them works very well. And one is it's the kid's problem, they have to do all the work. And then there's the others of the parents who are, basically writing the kids' essays. And it's
Yes.
like the scholarship's going to know that a kid didn't write this. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's one of the things that I'm working on a project right now to try to help parents find that middle ground where it's best for the scholarship process. And um,
Well, let
so
us know where you
interesting.
land.
Yeah, yeah. So I know I'm just trying to get something out into the world, and I'm working. You mentioned Chat GPT. I'm trying to use that as a design feature, and
Mhm.
I can't design anything, so trying to learn how to do that. Well, obviously, both of you are very knowledgeable and passionate about working with young people in their early career. Tell us a little bit about LaunchPoint Talent and who you work with and how you work with them.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that we're passionate about it. We sometimes joke that when people make like Gen Z references, we are like right in there on that. You mentioned Facebook groups and don't come at us with like these generational stereotypes because we love Gen Z. We love working with young adults. Our goal is to help college students sort of cut through the noise. There's so much out there and there's so much conflicting guidance in
Mhm.
this space. It's also often very generic. And so our goal is to sit side by side with students, with their families, help them cut through the noise, help them take really smart, really confident steps towards their future. And I think one of the things that we're most proud of is that our goal isn't just to help them land their first role or land their first internship. That is a beautiful outcome often of the work that we're doing. But we want to help them see themselves differently. We love when they have sort of these very reflective moments when we can mirror back to them what we see in their experiences, the behaviors, the competencies, the skills that we now see they have developed that they haven't even identified in themselves. Like those are skills they get to take with them long after their work with us is over. And so I think those are some of the things that we feel really good about when we kind of log off at the end of the day.
That's very cool. How can people get in touch with you?
Yes, please do get in touch with us. We are on all the social channels. I would say we're probably most active on LinkedIn. So find our personal profiles and our launch profile on LinkedIn. You can also visit our website, launchpointtalent.com. we'd love to, have a career consult. We do career consultations daily with students who are, looking for some help and trying to figure out how they can navigate this whole process. We do that with parents as well, sometimes students and parents together, which we think is ideal. But find us on our website, schedule some time with us. We'd love to hear from all of you.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. I'm sure the listeners did, and I know that they'll be reaching out to you. So, Natalie and Stephanie, thank you both so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. We're glad to be here.